in this era of life and work, how do we do it with more joy? How do we do it with more freedom? How do we do it with more fulfillment? Like it's everything I'm talking about right now is all about that. More joy, more freedom, more fulfillment. What does it look like?
Well, hello there, and welcome to this episode of the Terri Cole Show. Oh, I just had the most inspiring conversation with a pal of mine who I've known for decades at this point. Rha Goddess is her name. You may know her. She is an entrepreneurial soul coach, basically, behind hundreds of breakthroughs, changemakers. I met her originally, I'm going to say 20 years ago, at my friend Gabby Bernstein's house on Avenue B in New York City. I think that was the first time I met Rha, but she is a cultural visionary for sure. She helps social entrepreneurs, and she really, for all the years, is revolutionizing the way that we live, the way that we work. And in her newest book, it's called Intentional Ambition, Redefining Your Work for Greater Joy, Freedom, and Fulfillment. This book is basically a playbook on how to create a career and a life. A lot of people coming back sort of after the pandemic, people not wanting to go back to either the way their work was or the way their life was, which has left a lot of people sort of feeling like they're in the in-between, as I would call it. Like they're not sure how to go forward, but they really don't want to go back to the way that they were living. Or if you feel like you need a radical but gentle awakening in your life, I feel like this book is so inspiring. I mean, who doesn't want intentional ambition? I most definitely do. And she walks you through, there's exercises in it, but she also walks you through the process of sort of figuring out what is it that you want. I spent time with Rha and her husband, Corey, in Costa Rica. A couple of months ago, we were all there for an Esther Perel week long with Paul Brody. It was so wonderful. It was called Emotional Eroticism was what the week-long thing was about. And I was so happy to see Rha there because I hadn't seen her, hadn't really talked to her in years. And I was like, oh my God, we have to do lunch. So we ended up spending a bunch of time together. And then as soon as I knew she had this book coming out, I was like, oh my gosh, you have to come on my pod. So anyway, I really hope that you enjoy this interview with Rha Goddess as much as I enjoyed interviewing her. I am so excited to welcome my pal, Rha Goddess, to the show. Welcome, Rha.
Hey, 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 Terry, thank you so much for having me. It's my joy to be here.
I was talking at the top about how we just spent some time together in Costa Rica with Esther Perel and a bunch of other amazing people. It was just such a special and magical time. But really, for you and I, who we've known each other for friggin' decades, and it was the first time we got to spend any concentrated time together, and it was so wonderful. And you were exactly who I knew you were going to be, and it was really great. So anyway, welcome to the show.
Thank you, my love. It's so great to be here. And yes, it was so juicy and I want more. Okay.
Same, same. Let's
Get
meet
that
up
out
in
the
New
way.
York. We have lots of opportunities coming up. All
Yes.
right, so let's actually, before we get into this beautiful book baby that you just birthed, I want to get into like all of us do what we do for a reason. Like we all end up sitting in these seats having these conversations for a reason. So would you tell my people, how did you end up here? Any way you want to tell, like
Mm,
imagine if you were like a Marvel movie character, you'd have an origin story. What is your origin story that led you to this moment?
yeah. I always start with my parents. I consider myself, this is my joke, I'm a change of life baby, born into the intersection of civil rights and hip hop. And those were really the two movements that have shaped me and my approach and sort of philosophy about the world. Growing up, my parents very passionate about community and family and education and really like instilled those values in me. And so on many levels, it should be no surprise that at the heart of my work is liberation. Like that is just what I aspire to for every single one of us, what I aspire to for myself. Um, and I did the corporate good, fought the good fight in corporate for a little while, but got the memo early. And so really for the last, 30 plus years, I've been on the front lines of our humanity and just working with people and supporting their leadership. And I think now, in this era of life and work, how do we do it with more joy? How do we do it with more freedom? How do we do it with more fulfillment? Like it's everything I'm talking about right now is all about that. More joy, more freedom, more fulfillment. What does it look like?
All right. So then let's get into it, because the book is Intentional Ambition, Redefining Your Work for Greater Joy, Freedom, and Fulfillment, which, I mean, I don't care who you are or what you do, you want this. And I know from having a therapy practice for almost 3 decades that a lot of us lose this, even if we once had it, that these are things that can also be fleeting. So let's just start with, tell us about intentional ambition, because for my very ambitious crew, I'm so curious, like what was the inspiration for you tell us about the concept, but what was the inspiration for writing the book?
Yeah, it was my own meltdown, which happened in 2017. Um, and at the time that I was completely unraveling, it was on the heels of the death of my father, and I had kind of like plunged myself into work. He died towards the end of 2016,
Mm-hmm.
and I just kept on working, and so that I didn't have to deal with the grief of losing him. It's a major force in my life. And my sister and I had the privilege of caring for him for the last 21 years of his life. Um, and so much of my identity had been rooted in caring for him that for the first, probably 4 or 5 months after he passed, I kept looking at my phone, trying to understand why he wasn't calling me, and then would remember. But I plunged myself into work, and it became this sort of more the merrier. And I was somebody who was already very ambitious, had grown up with the hustle mentality for sure, the rise and grind. Like I was absolutely a subscriber.
Yeah.
And it was exacerbated
Mm.
by my activism, my activism roots, right? My roots as an activist. So it was like rise and grind times 10.
Yeah.
Because I'm fighting systemic structures, or I'm helping people navigate systemic structures, or, I'm trying to create a better world, or all of the things that we tell ourselves to burn the candle at all the ends. When I had my meltdown, and my meltdown came on the heels of Charlottesville, Virginia, and the Unite the Right rally that just erupted into mayhem and violence, and ultimately, sadly, the death of Heather Henley. And I happened to have a very diverse team at the time. And one of the members of my team was from Charlottesville and actually had lived on the street where Heather was mowed down. And she squared off with another member of my team, and it proceeded to just fracture everybody right down the middle. And so this happens on August 12th, I think it was, right? 2017. By September 10th, half the group's not speaking to the other half of the team, which is, a lot of fun when you're trying to get work done. And
Yeah, that's a problem.
hello. And then by October 10th, I couldn't get off the couch.
Mm.
And I literally turned to my husband and I was like, I'm not okay. And I'll say that, like that's not,
Right.
it just is not in my lexicon, but it was my truth.
Right.
And that opened the door for me to start to seek a different kind of support. And it was a combination of my therapist and a really incredible coach that enabled me to unravel the nature of my ambition. And it was really through that process. And it's interesting because in 2018, I was writing The Calling, the first book. And
Right.
the seed of this dropped in. Now, I had no idea we were going to go into a pandemic. And I had no idea that the Great Resignation was going to show up or arrive in the center of that pandemic. But it was the 1-2 punch of my own journey and that realization in 2021 and 2022, and all of what I watched unfold with, you know, all of the ways that people did not want to come back, that let me know that there were deeper conversations we needed to have about this experience. And like beyond the statistics and the sound bites were the everyday lived realities of people whose lives were completely upended and transformed. And no matter what kind of pandemic you had, like I say, if you had retreat style pandemic or all heck broke loose in your pandemic,
Yeah.
like we're not the same.
We're not. It's so interesting though. Like I had this vision when you were talking about your breakdown to breakthrough of really looking at, which you do in this book, what is driving us? What was driving you to sort of that level of never stopness, the burning of all the ends, and it's so interesting because when you're as capable as you are, and same for me, wow, it takes like so much to get to that couch. I bet your husband, Corey, was like, what is happening?
Yeah. Yeah. And there's so many of us for whom that is the case.
Yeah.
And at the same time, we are in a moment of reckoning because there are people who know they're different, you know, and people ask me all the time, like, who's the book for? It's for people who know they're not going back, but they're still trying to figure out how they're going to go forward.
Yeah, love
You
it.
know, what are the new terms and
Yes.
conditions
Yep.
that are going to guide? Or I know how I want to go forward, but I need some affirmation
Yeah.
that I'm onto something.
Yes, I think there's something though, so like there's a whole generation of people that need this book from what you're describing, where I see this in my therapy clients. I call it the in-between. So it's like we're stuck, or this feeling of, I know I can't go back. And it's interesting. I saw this with my super highly visible clients as well, whose lives are never stop. Never stop, because that shit is a machine and there is no stopping. There is no stopping. But you know what stopped? The pandemic. And what shifted, what changed, what flourished and what died, right? There were marriages that ended. There was side careers that began. It was so fertile though, because it was the pause that none of us signed up for, but probably everybody fucking needed. You know what I mean? Like hello.
100%.
So now let's talk about, let's say people are listening to this and being like, you're right. Like I have not been the same. I don't want to go back to, because a lot of my clients felt like the pandemic was a wake-up call for them, in that they had not slowed down long enough in a very long time to go, hey, is this how I want to be living? Is this what I want to do? So for people who are there right now, where they're still there, right? They're still going through the
Yeah.
motions. You're still dealing with, now obviously kids went back to school and all of that, but there was a lot of fallout over that. What do you say to the people who are in that in-between phase right now?
Yeah. I think the first thing is you got to tell the truth to yourself about it.
Yes.
You know, I was in this conversation yesterday, and one of the questions that this person asked me was, well, what if I am going back and I'm trying to go back and do what I did before? I said, you're discovering that that's just not possible. And you may not be telling the truth to yourself about it yet,
Yeah.
but we energetically know, even if we don't have the words for it. And so the first part is we've got to be willing, and this is such an intimate and personal request,
Mm-hmm.
and that is that you got to get with you, and you got to really acknowledge, like, something's changed for me. Maybe what I want is different, or maybe I still want what I want, but I want it differently.
Right.
I want to experience something different. or maybe the relationships I'm in are no longer serving me, right? This is where it gets tough, Terry, right? And I know this
Yep.
is your terrain, right?
Yep. But you're so right though. In the first step, regardless of what your situation is to tell the truth to yourself. And I would always say to my clients, because that can be so threatening, I would always say, listen, first of all, you already know it. So when it's just you and you looking in the mirror, like, you know it. Like, when people would come in to see me and they're like, I want to work on my marriage, I would just spontaneously say, has the ship already sailed? Like, is it already over? And like half the time they're like, yeah, kind of. I'm like, okay. So why don't we actually work on the thing you want to work on, which is, how do I extricate myself? Or how do we do this with love? But most of the time people knew, like, I would get probably 50% of the time a conclusive, yeah, it is. Because for some people, they wait so long, it's already too late. So taking your guidance and sort of being like, okay, something has changed for me. Now it's like moving into how can people become more intentionally ambitious? Like, what needs
What's
to
the
shift in
process?
life, right?
Yeah. So I'll talk a little bit about like the continuum, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
in a lot of cases, we may not even be clear about how we got here. Because I know for me, when I landed on the couch, I wasn't all the way clear
Mm-mm.
about how I got there. And it wasn't until I began to unravel all of the layers that had been influencing my drive that I began to even get a sense of how deep it was, right?
Mm-hmm.
And deep in the sense that I'm still integrating the new practices of how to work in a different way,
Yep.
right? So, this idea of being able to look at the stages and phases of where we've been. So negotiation, I say, is the first phase, right? And it's really, I call negotiation as a navigation,
Mm.
which is like you've come to the table, it's somebody else's terms, and you're
Yeah.
trying to figure out how to navigate in a way that is ultimately successful for you,
Mm.
right? However you define it. And often the way that that success is defined is outside of you. Somebody has set a standard. You're trying
Mm-hmm.
to meet it. That's
Yep.
what's going on. Resignation, what I call 1.0, 2.0. 1.0 is, this is just the way it is. Suck it up, princess.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You
Right.
feel what I mean, right?
Yeah.
And trudge on through, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of people we know, Terry, spend a lot of their lives there.
Yeah.
Um, and then you have resignation 2.0, which is the peace out, I'm done, we're done form of
Mm.
resignation. And I believe that that's like the moment of awakening
Mm.
where you have the potential to invite something different. If
Mm.
you stay awake at the wheel, if you're willing to
Yeah.
lean into the discomfort
Yeah.
of the disruption, then something else becomes possible, right?
Mm.
And so this final phase, which is really the heart of how we set the new terms and conditions, is really renegotiation.
Mm.
And in renegotiation, we reclaim the narratives, which was for me huge, like noticing what narratives were driving my ambition. My mother was in there and her Southern Baptist perfectionism. My
Yep.
father was in there and his unfinished business as a black man in America, right? Facing all kinds of racism.
Yep.
My survivor's guilt, being raised in a family within which mental health diagnoses ran rapid. And all of that was just part of what was in the engine, right? And the inferno that was just fueling this belief that I did not have the luxury of stopping or the luxury of
Yep.
resting. You feel me, right? Or taking a
I do.
break or respecting in any way, shape, or form my humanity. So the reclaiming, then the realigning is about your values and what you value, and the ability to really ask yourself, when I look at my time and my energy
Mm.
more than anything, when I
Yep.
look at my energy, to what degree is what I'm placing my energy in true for me or not true? To what degree am I operating inside of what's working versus tolerating or trying to work around what's not working?
Mm-hmm.
And you got to stop to do that.
Yeah, you really do. So what do you say about, because the thing is, what as I'm listening, I feel like one of the things that I've seen so much in my therapy practice being kicked up when people are considering a big change or changing, just being able to say, I don't want to do this. And I can say that in my own life, right? Going from being a talent agent to then going back to school to becoming a therapist. I mean, many, many years ago, but there was so much fear that was kicked up when I got honest. Now, I had the awakening, right? People, they don't have to wait for something to happen in their life. They don't have to wait to be on the couch like you or to get cancer like I did, right? You guys, here's a book that's like, oh, hey, why don't you get proactive? And we could think about this shit now so you don't have to wait until you have some kind of a healing crisis or a psychological crisis.
Yeah.
But because I did have one of those, I had to ask the questions that you're asking us to ask right now in this beautiful book of, is this aligned with who I am? Is this what I want to be doing? Is this how I want to be spending my time? Am I still lit up about what I'm doing? When I got to that in my early 30s, the answer was no. I don't want to be doing this. It doesn't matter what other people think about it, because for a long time I stayed in that career because people were like, it's amazing. You're making all this money. You have celebrity clients, blah, blah, blah. And yet when the day was done, I was like, I'm not happy doing this anymore. I don't want to be a part of this misogynistic system where modeling hates women. Like, there was a whole thing that was involved. But I can imagine maybe people listening, their own desire to do something different, to break away. Maybe they ask the questions, they get the book, they start doing the exercises, they start looking at what it is. What do you say about how are we managing our fear of making a move?
This is so huge. I talk about this in the book, and this really comes from the incredible work of Gail Straub and David Gershon, and it is a distinction called the growing edge.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And it's, you work where you're ripe and ready. Mm-hmm. So for some of us, we're ready to rip up the floorboards, like, let's go, right? Yep. And there's an element of excitement, even in the terror.
Yep.
For others of us, when you start to look at the process of realignment and everything is out of whack, you can immediately be paralyzed by fear and overwhelmed. So you have to kind of go, what can I work on today? How do I take the first step, right? In the book, I talk about these 6 frontiers, and I give us 6 areas of life where we get to do this assessment process, take this inventory. And in the inventory, you can discern, okay, what area that's not working would be the least intimidating.
Yep. I love it.
Right? Like, okay, I can fire my dry cleaner. I could fire my dry cleaner tomorrow. I could get that done, right?
Yeah.
Recognizing and understanding that there's something very powerful that happens when you take the smallest step. You can actually take the next small step and the next one, like you actually gain momentum, which gives you the capacity and the courage to take some of the bigger steps. What also happens is, Terri, is that life then begins to start to co-conspire with you.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, that very difficult client disappears. And you have no idea what went on. Like, you didn't do anything.
Right. Quote unquote.
Quote unquote, right? But, so providence starts to move with you and on your behalf as you're starting to take these steps. The other thing is to know that courage is a practice, and it's one that we are all being called to cultivate. Yeah. Like, if you are serious about being happy, if you're serious about being free, if you're being fulfilled, you got to cultivate your courage.
Yes, it's so true, because, Rha, the thing, when you think about like the world, it's like not everyone wants that. right? Like some people just want peace. I remember the story that my mother told about her dad who, worked in a GE factory, and they wanted to like make him a manager. He was a great worker, and he just didn't want to. He literally, for him, he was such a nervous type of person. He
Mhm.
just was like, I like this. I don't want to be in charge of other people. And it was almost like when I was young, that story offended me so much. It made me so mad. I was like, who wants mediocre? Like, I don't get it, being so judgy of
Mhm.
someone who didn't have the same type of fired up ambition that I always had. But I think that what you're pivoting us towards something that's different with the intentionality of what you're sharing with us in this book. It's like you can be as ambitious as it makes sense for you to be. What are your values? What matter to you? And if you asked my grandfather, he would have said one thing. And if you asked me, I'd say something different. So yes, liberation, right? And for that generation, and he was, if he was alive, he'd be 100 years old, right? It was my highest value is freedom. My grandfather's probably would be security,
Right.
right? So it's
Right.
different. But for where you are right now, like, how do you think the state of the world, which is in
Mm.
quite a state,
Yeah.
how does that make sort of this book different and sort of more relevant than a lot that's out, like books on how to be successful that are out there?
Yeah. I think one, this is about self-defining,
Mm,
right? It is about not
yeah.
having everything. It is about having what matters to you
Mm,
and having the freedom and the permission to choose you,
yeah.
and not from some egoic place, but to choose
Mm-hmm.
you as an act of self-respect and self-love.
Mm,
And I feel like we're ready for it now more than ever, because when I look at in all of the conversations, I had lots in the creation and preparation of this book. When I look at what were sort of the three most common significant shifts that people gave voice to, when I asked them what was different for them,
mm-hmm.
my humanity. And that was connected to health and well-being. Like the degree to which I'm willing to self-neglect
Yeah.
shifted, right? Like,
Yeah.
no, now I'm going to drink my water and I'm going
Mm,
to walk around the lake, or I'm going to get my 25-minute HIIT workout in, or you feel me,
mm-hmm.
whatever that
Yep.
part is, that health and well-being, that fundamental, or I'm going to get my rest. Because a
Yes.
lot of people were craving space and rest.
Yep.
The second major shift, which is connected to this realignment, is authenticity.
Mm,
And I believe that there's a direct connection between your authenticity and your energy.
yeah.
When you're out of alignment, you ain't got a lot of energy.
Mm-hmm.
Powerlessness is expensive.
Yeah. It's so true. And the energy you do have is energy that someone who is aligned doesn't, it feels uncomfortable to be around.
You hear? And
Yeah.
so this new level of self-love and self-respect
Mm,
and the desire to be one's self has gone to a new level. And then this third piece, which is our joy and our happiness matter.
mm,
And that's connected to our relationship to work and the way we work, right? But it's also our quality of relationships, what I call our quality of experience, our quality of life, our quality of day to day. And that
yep.
our quality of day to day is our quality of life.
Mm. Without a doubt. Without a doubt. Because it's interesting. People in this, self-help realm of world, you know, there's always talking about these peak experiences. And I'm always like, hey man, it is not just the peak experiences that change your life. It's literally the baby steps. It's how much time you spend every day, how you're spending your time every day actually makes up the quality of your life. And it's not to say that peak experience that they don't influence us. Sure, they can, but they're few and far between. But what you're talking about is stuff that we can be mindful of every single day with every decision that we're making.
every single day. I'll give a super quick example.
Sure.
So, Corey, my beloved husband,
Cute.
every morning for 5 minutes, he has what he calls his cold brew moment, where he stands at the counter in the kitchen. We have the honor and privilege of living on the water, so he's looking out over the water. Hair all over his head, bathrobe tied, barely awake. Maybe he's brushed his teeth, I think. And he just sips his cold brew. And that's the way that he starts his morning. And he gives himself those 5 minutes before he does anything else to get his day in motion. And there's something really powerful about something that simple.
Absolutely.
Right? That we can allow ourselves or put in place for ourselves every day. And, when people pushed back about not wanting to go back to the office, there were lots of reasons. But one of the biggest reasons, I can close the Zoom room and I don't have to worry about you knocking on my door. I can go take a walk with my dog in the middle of the day and just get some fresh air. You know what I'm saying? It was those very simple things that improved people's quality of experience.
So much. It's so interesting, Rha. You're so right. It's like when you think about what was gained, right? For my clients who had unhappy home lives, let's say, or they were not, they thought it was fine when they were two ships in the night. And then when they were trapped together for a long time, they realized that they really had drifted, let's say. But for people whose home life is a sanctuary, the quality of life exponentially increased. And it's exactly what you're saying. And I think that finding a way of being intentional with what you're going back to or how you would go back, which is basically what you're walking us through. It's the wake up of really claiming what matters to me. Because for Corey, those 5 minutes, which anything done consistently like that, it can, as weird as it sounds, but from a therapeutic point of view, I could see it literally changing your life. Because you've put the entire universe on notice, right? What Corey does with his morning 5 minutes is he's declaring every day how I feel, what I think, what I want matters. And this is how I will walk through my life. And when we start the day that way, you're literally setting yourself up to sort of continue walking in a way that is self-honoring. And I think that so much of what you've talked about in this interview is how I don't know, pervasive these little ways that we self-abandon, that just here and there and this place and giving into that person. And before you know it, you're like, who am I? And this book is a reclamation, is what it seems like to me.
And in that, thank you for saying that. And in that reclamation, knowing that we have the ability to reimagine what we want it to look like. And I know that for some of us, we don't feel like we have choice in the matter. We very much feel at the mercy of our situations and circumstances. But this conversation of renegotiation is reminding us that we actually do. And that it is ours to take into our own hands, that no one's going to do it for us.
It's so good, though. It's such a gentle invitation, though, to reimagine, because that's really what you're inviting us to do, Rha, is to open our minds. It's like, think about things when you were younger. I think about things when I was younger that I couldn't even imagine that it could happen, whether it was a family of origin thing or just something where you'd be like, oh my God, that would never. And with my clients, when they're stuck in this place of like, I was just talking to someone who was saying, I'm completely numb inside. I have no time to do anything. I work full time. My parents were horrible parents, totally neglectful. and they're old, and now I'm the only sole caregiver for both of them. I'm still waiting for them to wake up. And I was like, let me ask you something. If you got abducted by aliens right now, what do you think would happen to your parents? Like, sometimes we have to be jolted out of this box that we feel like we're painted into. You're doing it more
Yeah.
gentle than that question would. But that question says the truth. The truth. If she was abducted by aliens, you know what? Someone else would do something. I don't know who. But you know what would happen? The sun would still come up. The earth would still be spinning on its axis. Like,
Yeah.
we get so like, oh, it has to be me and I have to do it this way. And yet, one thing I love that this book is coming on the heels as we're out of the pandemic mindset, not mindset, we're out of the pandemic, the critical part of it. So that now it's like, okay, what can I take from it? Because one thing it did show us is that everything that every corporation said we couldn't do, oh, we did. Everything that every school said we couldn't do, we did. Because the world had to
We
keep
had to.
going.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
So who do you want to, like, who do you really hope in your heart of hearts finds this book? Like, is there a type of person who you think needs it right now?
I definitely think people who recognize that there are some things shifting inside of them that relate to the way that they define ambition and success, that they're seeking and they're searching for ways to help define and clarify what that is. I said my no going, my no going backers. You're not going back, but you're still not clear about what the new terms and conditions are for how to go forward. For
Yep.
sure, this is for you. I think for people who want to affirm that they are moving in the right direction because they're being called to more purpose and greater meaning, and they're willing to be unapologetic about it, even if they don't quite yet know what it looks like. This is definitely for them. And I would say people who are really ready to have more joy, are really ready to have more, a sense of greater agency and a sense of deeper fulfillment in the way that they spend their day to day, particularly around their work.
Yes.
Yeah.
Love it. All right. So I have one question for you that's just unrelated question because I ask everyone about this. So personally, what has been your most challenging boundary struggle and how did you overcome it if you have?
I would say my personal biggest boundary struggle has been around my energy and giving my energy to things that suck me dry.
Totally.
And it is something that I have to consistently manage. It is one of the learnings, the great learnings from my own unraveling, has been that my energy is something I have to pay tremendous attention to. I heard this quote, successful people don't pay attention to their time. They pay attention to their energy. They manage their energy. And that has stayed with me.
I love that so much. It's so true. My God. All right. So tell us, where can people find you? You guys, I'm going to have all the information that you need on Rha and the book in the show notes. If you're just joining, the book is Intentional Ambition, Redefining Your Work for Greater Joy, Freedom, and Fulfillment by Rha Goddess. It's amazing. You're going to love it. So where can people find you?
So I am on all of the channels. So at Rha Goddess or /Rha Goddess if you're a LinkedIn baby, or at Rha Goddess if
Yep.
you're IG. And then our work, the company is Move the Crowd. Our website address is movethecrowd.me, as in move me. And then the book is available on all of the major retail outlets, including Audible. And yeah. So,
Wow. Well,
in all the
I'm
formats.
super excited for you. Thank you so much for being here with us. I know that you are illuminating and helping so many people during this time of need. Like, you are literally bringing the medicine. So you guys, you listen to the interview. If you love what Rha had to say as much as I do, go out and get the book, follow her, join her, do whatever it is that you got to do to move through, because how you feel matters. And that's what this book is going to help you with. Thank you, Rha.
Thank you so much, Terry, for having me and for your incredible work. So appreciate you.